when he knows 100% certainty, epistemic certainty, that he cannot be wrong, like Cartesian certainty. I want to know that, but go ahead.
I also have something to say.
I just want to interject and say there is actual mathematical proof of evolution. It's called it's Price's theorem or the Price equation. You're welcome.
Okay, John, what's your answer to that? What do you know 100% fact aside from mathematics?
The closest thing that I would absolutely believe in for, as close to 100% certainty is the fact that I exist and I am in control.
No.
Are you sure?
Not close.
Nope.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what...
I'm not asking for close. I'm asking for 100% certainty, the exact thing you are asking from us.
Are you sure?
I exist.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, are you sure you exist? Because...
Yeah, pretty sure
okay.
I am.
Oh, pretty sure.
Okay, you're pretty sure.
Pretty sure is not 100%.
Pretty sure is not certainty.
Well, obviously I'm being a little sarcastic.
Okay, then don't be sarcastic.
That's perfectly
I want to know
fine.
what you need. I can tell you right now, I am certain. I can spend hours and tell you why I'm certain that I exist. But why do you exist?
Why? That's a different question. Why do I exist?
Why do you believe that you exist? You say, well, first of all,
philosophical question.
of course it's philosophical. It's existential.
Why?
Do you have 100% certainty that you exist? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Ow.
Why should we believe that you exist?
Because I'm here. I'm looking at myself right now. I can think things in my brain.
We can't see you.
Dude, you could be a pea zombie.
I can't see you. I see you.
Yeah, you could wait. Rotan, you could be a pea zombie. You could be an automatron. We have no idea. You could be,
You are asking me. You're asking
Well,
me.
yeah. How do you know this? Give us your justification.
And then you're saying, "Oh well, how come I don't believe?" Well, that's you. If you don't have to believe me, I don't
Okay.
care.
Well, even still, you haven't made an argument why you know you exist.
Well,
No, but
Steve,
you
let's
changed the
grant
question
him that.
around.
Let's grant
You
him
changed the
that.
question around, and then you're trying to damn me for.
Well, hold on. Let's see if we can fix this. Steve, let's grant him that he exists. So aside from yourself, are you saying you're the only thing that you know for a certain fact is true?
That is the closest thing to 100% certainty that I
Okay,
know.
so you buy other stuff, right? There are other things that you believe and that you would consider true, correct?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how is that any different from what the thing with evolution is? If by them saying beyond a reasonable doubt that this is most likely the way that it was, but they can't be absolutely certain. If you're just missing that little piece, that little absolute certain, and the only thing you can be certain of is that you exist. Now, what's your reason for not taking evolution?
The reptiles into birds, the land-walking mammals into whales. It's just that it gets absurd. That's all. I just don't believe it.
What's absurd about it?
What's absurd about it?
There are absurd things that happen.
So far,
show that a reptile can. How do you know that these things ever happen? You have no idea that these things happen. All you have
Because they happen every day.
All you have, every day. Okay,
No, they
show me.
don't. No, they
How did we
don't.
get here,
Show
Wotan?
me.
How it happen
They
every day.
do.
Oh, you said it happens
Every
day. No,
birth
I'm gonna hold
is
it.
every birth is evolution in action.
No, it's not.
How did
Absolutely,
we
it is.
Absolutely, you're
Hey,
changing the
Joe.
frequency, don't you?
Yeah, Joe, are you a clone of your mother or your father?
That means nothing. The clone argument.
No.
Yes, it does. It means
No,
a heck of a lot.
No.
No.
Answer the question. Are you a clone of your mother or your father?
We're both humans. We're both humans.
Doesn't matter. Answer the question.
That does not matter one bit.
Are you
Yeah,
a
it does.
clone of your mother or your father?
I'm a variety of human.
Okay, you're a variety of
Which
human.
means
That
evolution has taken place.
That
No,
means
it
you
doesn't.
have genes.
Yes, it does.
Dr.
That
Mays,
doesn't
this is where we go to an expert.
Yes,
Dr.
it does.
Mays. Dr. Mays.
Yeah, Dr.
Dr.
Mays.
Mays.
Hang on.
Right
Dr.
down
Mays.
there.
If you,
Dr. Mays,
is
right
it-
down there.
Is it correct to assume that if there's been a change of allele frequency in any population, that evolution has occurred within the population?
Within
Yes.
a specific population,
No,
yeah.
Well,
Not
yes,
even-
we're talking about within a specific
It's
population.
not even.
natural.
It's
It's
not
not
even that it's safe to assume.
It's a fact. That's what it's by definition,
It's-
right?
That's
Not natural.
evolution
That's
by
evolution
definition.
by definition, right?
The
But
bigger
not
question.
macroevolution. It's not macro.
Well, right.
Joe, you're just so moving the goalpost on the
Steve,
bars right
Steve,
now.
I'm not.
Steve,
I know
real
it's
quick, guys, technical issue. Steve, in the settings, click
Yep.
my name and click make me co-host
Sure.
so that I can be watching and
Yep.
mute
You got it.
cases. I don't want to mute anybody. Like I don't want to treat anybody like 5 years. But people out there can't understand when people are jumping in. So Joe, let him finish his answer and then you can respond. And just don't talk over him.
Yep, there you go.
So the bigger question, everyone said, if you have a change in allele frequency from one generation to the next, that's evolution by definition. So if you believe in that, then you believe in evolution. It's just a fact.
Amen.
That's it. The bigger problem that people have is with common ancestry. So this idea that birds and crocodiles, lizards, I can't stand this term reptiles. So I could explain why reptiles isn't a good term, but birds, crocodiles, lizards, etc., share a common ancestry is a model that we have. So we can posit a model that says life shares a certain group, not even all life, a certain group, say all vertebrates, share a common ancestry. The alternative model is they don't share a common ancestry, and there's separate lineages of vertebrates. So there's a separate bird lineage that never shared any genes with anybody else. There's a separate crocodile lineage that never shared any genes with anybody else. Those two models make different predictions. And so then we go and look at the data, and we see what the data look like, and we see if the data match the predictions of one model versus another model. The data, over and over again, across different independent lines of inquiry, match the common ancestry model. So that's how we know that birds came from non-birds, and that vertebrates share a common ancestry, because that model makes predictions of the data that we can test. And we do that over and over again in different lines of data in different ways, and again and again and again, it comes to the same answer that life shares a common ancestry. So that's how it works. Now, that's the same way. Let me finish. That's the same way we know the sun's at the center of the solar system. The sun at the center of the solar system is not a sort of, there's no camera that's been launched out into space that looks back on the solar system and takes a movie. We have a model, and people for a long time have looked up into the sky and watched the movement of the planets. Planets are called planets because in Greek it means wanderer, because they're the only things in the sky that would move a while and they would go back. And the only thing that explains that is that particular heliocentric model of the solar system. So that's the same thing. Atoms are the same thing. We have a theory of atomic theory that explains that matter is constructed of atoms. That theory makes predictions. And we see that those predictions are met in the data, and that leads us to conclude that the atomic theory of matter is right. So like heliocentric system or the atomic theory of matter, evolution is a model, or common ancestry is a model that we test against the data, and the data match the predictions of the model, and that's how we know that it's true.
And Joe, let me ask you real quick, Joe, to expand about that. If I said, look, I'm discovered a new particle, right? Yeah, you got to get the looky counter. If I said I discovered a new particle, and I have what's called 6 sigma, which is 99.99966%, that's pretty high confidence, 99.99966%. Would you say at that point that I don't have reason to believe that I've discovered that new particle?
Oh, but no. But I'm saying that evolution evidence that
evolution is greater than
No.
Evolution is greater than that percentage of the certainty.
It's ambiguous.
No, it is not. It is greater than 6 sigma. It only takes 6 sigma to discover a particle, which, by the way, is really, really high.
You know what ambiguous means, Joe?
But you don't understand is that there is the evidence for evolution is so overwhelming that is literally.
That is not what ambiguous.
That's not what ambiguous means.
That's not what ambiguous.
It could be this or that.
No,
that's not what ambiguous means.
All right, read it off to me if you want.
Stop using big words, Joe.
It's like
monosyllabic words only. If you're not familiar with polysyllabic words, okay.
It's ambiguous.
That's like Vecco keeps on saying arbitrary. Everything's arbitrary.
Like, my model fits the predictions just as well as evolutionary.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Really,
Not at all.
Interesting.
One example. What is your prediction? And I'll rival it.
Okay.
That's
okay, John, I'll give you a chance at this. So, if you look at a bunch of organisms and you look at the diversity of amino acids in a certain protein across a bunch of different species. Now, what are the predictions of a model of independent ancestry versus common ancestry for how diverse those amino acid sequences will be when, this is key, when those amino acid sequences don't vary in accordance with function. So all the variance is neutral. It doesn't matter. So what's the pattern you would predict for common ancestry versus independent ancestry for amino acid sequences comparisons, and how do the data match each one, and what's the p-value or the expected p-value you would expect with that?
Okay, I predict that reptiles would make proteins, for example, ABC, and then perhaps mammals would make proteins CBA.
Do you know what a protein is, Joe?
Yes.
What a protein?
They're made up of amino acids,
okay.
but the configurations could vary beyond different clades. So reptiles could make proteins this way, and mammals can make proteins
So
this
why is
way.
there a conservation between them? Like cytochrome C, why is there a conservation so highly conserved?
Excuse me, Joe. Would you like some dressing with that word salad?
I'm trying.
It's pretty simple.
Like I said, I'm nowhere near the.
Pretty simple.
You know,
It's pretty simple.
I'm
Trevor.
just trying to break it down for the layperson here because I'm a layperson, but I'm confused on this, Joe. What the fuck are you talking about?
He said that across species, different clades produce amino acids or proteins a certain way,
Okay,
and that is only explainable through clades.
clades, but
Clades.
I don't think
Yeah.
you're real, Joe.
I don't know how you
That's
got
not
that
what I
from what he
said.
just said. I
That's
really,
not-
I'm trying to
actually
jumble up his
not
words
at
in my
all
head,
what
and
I
I
said.
can't make that happen.
Do you just have like a set of things that you fall back to once someone tries to? Because that's what it sounds like.
Because I've heard the arguments before, but now I want to know.
Yeah, no, I don't
if
think you
if that's
have
right.
because he presented something that you did not respond to.
Well, I mean, maybe I don't understand it, so
Clearly,
I want to have a separate debate with Mr. Myers altogether.
why? I'm curious. Why do you think you're at a level to debate somebody like Dr.
You don't want to do that,
I'm
Joe.
curious. I'm curious.
'Cause
No,
it's not that hard.
I'm not. Okay, first of all,
Because it's not that hard. No, you know
they just hand out
why?
PhD to everybody. Here, a PhD for you.
Because
a
you
PhD
want
for
more
you.
notoriety and you want more clicks because then you can turn this onto your own
God's
channel.
sake.
Listen,
Come
this man
on,
is
dude.
debating- This man is
Jesus
debating
Christ.
a biologist from Harvard University next month, a guy that works at Answers in Genesis named Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, a guy that
Come on.
that should be debating Dr. Mays. You're arbitrarily throwing out nuh-uhs and I know you're wrong because of blah, and you're not giving any reasons there. None of your reasons are remotely coherent. None.
You're basically a YouTube comic section come to life.
Right.
He said that neutral mutations is evidence for common ancestry, right? And it's how they.
No.
I don't
That's
think
not
what
what
he
I
said
said.
either. But what is a
You're not
neutral-
paying attention.
not
You're
what
even
he
paying
said.
attention.
Then I misunderstood.
We think so too.
Clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm pretty curious now.
I bet
what
you
he
don't.
meant.
The floor is yours, dude. Do it.
Dr. Mays, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, what did you mean by that? Because
So if you look at the same protein in a bunch of different organisms, and those proteins will vary. So there's diversity in the amino acid sequences in each of those proteins.
which is what
Now,
I
what
said.
we're looking at is the pattern of diversity among those different species. Now, that pattern can either follow a pattern that you would expect based on common ancestry or a pattern that you would expect based on independent origins. Okay?
I don't see how independent origins-
That diversity, this is the important part, that diversity is neutral, meaning that the variations don't mean anything.
You're breaking up a little bit, Dr. Mays.
Actually, variation codons, the underlying DNA sequences that encode those amino acids.
Guys,
It's
suppo-
neutral.
guys, suppose
It's
you
not
have-
changing the
Dr. Mays, suppose you're breaking up, by the way. But suppose you have these mutual mutations that do an amino acid substitution, but it doesn't change the functionality of the protein because it's a similar amino
Yeah.
acid of some way. So it folds the same, has the same function. It does whatever it's supposed to do for apoptosis or whatever. Can you not trace that phylogenetically under proteomics back through lines of speciation and see where these substitutions have occurred and trace it back? If there wasn't a common ancestry, wouldn't we expect there to be kind of more of a random type of amino acid substitution?
Yes. You would expect a pattern. If there's no common ancestry, that means that any neutral mutations in one lineage, which never shared any genes with any other lineage, those would have occurred independently through mutation from any other. A change in one lineage in an underlying codon, a DNA sequence, say, for a protein coding gene, wouldn't magically just happen in the other lineage.
Mm-hmm.
They're independent of one another if there's no shared common ancestry.
Well, if they're all
If
reptiles,
if there's shared common ancestry, then you can have these mutations happen in a common ancestor.
Does that make
So a
sense?
single mutation occurred in the past that those two lineages that split now share. Now, if those two lineages are independent of one another, that means that same mutation occurred independently in those two things. And that is very improbable when you start to sum this data over thousands and thousands of bases.
okay, so common ancestry is, in the alternate model, a thing, but the extent of common ancestry isn't like everything. Like, it's not everything has one common ancestor. So maybe all cats and felines have a common ancestor, maybe they don't. But this neutral mutation that you're talking about Is it between